everybody. Welcome to the show. It is July. Can you imagine we're in July, Kevin? It's like almost the middle of July, almost there. 4th of July's already passed. The chain's 4 weeks old. It's still running. There you go. That's a positive sign.
It's like an old man chain at this point. It's
in Twitter, in crypto years, right?
Yeah, sitting in its rocking chair by now. Just talking about the good old days already, aren't we, Blue Jays?
Right. Right.
I saw the governance chat was talking about how EOSDAC used to be the worst bad actor block producer a few weeks ago, and now we have all sorts of new stuff happening. So,
oh yeah,
those good old days, huh?
Good old days when there was only one bad actor block producer, right?
So-called bad actor, right? Yeah, who knows?
So-called.
People had all kinds of reasons for that. But yeah, and actually, speaking of EOSDAC, we have Andrew F. coming on shortly. He's going to talk about more about DACs and why they're so powerful. He's put out a couple of good videos now about DACs. An intro a couple weeks ago, about maybe a month ago or so, and then he put out a very detailed one, 30 minutes long, if you really want to dive in, and that came out maybe a week ago now. And then we have EOS Rio coming on as well, and they have a new tool they're going to be introducing. They have their SimpliOS wallet that folks are familiar with. It's a beautiful wallet. Folks seem to really enjoy it. And then now they have a new block producer monitoring tool to help people keep up with block producers. So we'll see how that looks.
Yeah. I'm excited about the DAC, Andrew F. He did have that 30-minute video, and I admit I didn't go through all of it. I do get the concept of a DAC, though, and that's what EOSDAC is doing, is they're coming up with tools and systems in place so that they enable DACs better. And for anybody involved who doesn't know what a DAC it is a decentralized, autonomous. The C can stand for many things: collective, community, corporation. Either way, it's an organization, right? Yeah, and like I said, like you said, Kevin, that Domi from EOS Rio is going to come on and show the wallet and also some cool tools that we have for selecting BPs or getting BP data. So make your votes according to that, and get out and vote, everybody.
Yeah, get out the vote, right? We've seen some recent talk from Dan. We'll have Andrew come on here shortly, but recent talk from Dan too. He's speculated, or he's offered the idea that some of those RAM trading fees, the 0.5% you have to pay to buy RAM, and then the 0.5% fee for selling RAM again, some of those fees may be paid back to people who are staked, who are voting. So kind of a nice little kickback, perhaps, from the RAM fees. I mean, that's just a proposal. It's not anything that's been set in stone. But, of course, a lot of people thought that was a great idea. They liked that.
Yeah, I've only heard rumors of it, so it is true. That's a great idea. I mean, I don't know how much everybody would make, but those fees seem to be getting up there. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, having staked people who are educated and really care about the network, obviously, if they have their tokens staked, they have a little bit more risk put out there in terms of who they should be voting for. And then if they're getting paid, we just want to incentivize more people to jump in and vote. So that doesn't hurt, right? Especially, we've also heard the ideas of possibly increasing the number of block producers that can be voted for from 30, possibly all the way up to 50, was what Block 1 wanted folks to do. Of course, these are, again, proposals. So usually, from what I've noticed, it seems like when Block 1 has an idea, usually he has pretty good support behind it from the community and whatnot. So we'll see what happens here.
Yeah, I just checked on the RAM fee account. It's already up to 1.3 million EOS. Just from RAM fee. Yeah.
Wow.
So significant, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it's, and that's, of course, what, $10 million? How much are we at? $8 million?
Yeah, around that. It's actually 1.3. So yeah, you're right. Probably around 10 million.
Okay. Yeah, about 10 million right now. So not bad, right? Kick back to the 30% of people voting right now, or however many it is. And here comes Andrew F. He's logging in right now with EOSDAC. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey, guys. Hey, Blue Jays and Kevin. How's it going?
Going well. Yeah, good to meet you.
Good to meet you guys, too.
Can you please pronounce your last name? I haven't dared. I tried to do that.
Yeah, sure. My name's Andrew Manzik. I live in British Columbia, Canada.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird last name.
Wait, hold on. Kevin, you were just there, weren't you?
Yeah, British Columbia. Actually, we went up drove all the way up to Whistler from Vancouver, along that really beautiful area. I mean, They have that bay, and they have what's it called, Horseshoe Bay down there.
Yeah,
All
see,
those
this
great
guy's
stuff.
super nice.
That area is unbelievable. I couldn't get over it. It was incredible. So, I don't know what you're doing inside right now, Andrew. I mean, you should be out there running through the forests and.
Yeah, I'll just carry my laptop through the forest, and hopefully I can get good Wi-Fi out there.
Get some Wi-Fi amidst the huge trees. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's dive in a little bit. I mean, you have a great backstory. You told us a little bit about it, and if you could just tell everybody, I mean, I'd love to hear more about your history, where you came from, and how you got into DACs and EOS.
Yeah, it's I could probably talk an entire 20-minute session just about how I got to where I am, but I'm going to try to pare it down. Okay, so it all starts way back when I was a teenager. I wanted to be a concert pianist, so I practiced for 6 hours a day. And, you know, what ended up happening was before I could even get to university, basically I got like a viral heart condition that hospitalized me 2 different times. So it's called pericarditis. And basically it can pop your heart and you can die from it. So it ended up giving me a whole bunch of other problems on the side, such as like tendonitis, some stomach ulcers from side effects from medication. But in short, what ended up happening was it completely derailed my dreams of becoming a concert pianist because I got stage 4 tendonitis in my hands. So one day, so, you know, this is a multi-year thing. It was basically affected me from when I was a late teen to early 20s. So somewhere along the lines when I was about 19, I was about 2 years into this whole ordeal. And I was getting pretty depressed at that point, and I was just kind of like sitting in my chair and thinking, man, I might not live to see like 25 years old, because I was only like 115 pounds at that point. I was really sick. So I was questioning stuff that most people don't question until they're quite old in their lifetime, and they're looking back on like, oh man, I'm probably going to die soon. What did I do with my life? I was kind of already thinking those things. And so I thought to myself, like, okay, yes, it sucks where I've been, but also too, I've had a really, really great life. Like I've had, you know, parents who really love me, who paid for music lessons. I've had to have quite a few really great positive experiences. So I started to feel thankful. And then at the same time, I was like, you know, I wish I could do something to give back to people. But at that point, I didn't have any resources or a lot of skills to do anything like that. But I was like, you know what? I do know about piano, so maybe I could give back to the people out there. So I decided to basically create a YouTube channel. This is way back in 2006, where I wanted to give anyone who had a passion to learn music the ability to learn piano for themselves. So I guess I started an online community in a really, really early age. Like this is before YouTube was acquired by Google in 2008, right? So I just posted these video kind of courses on there. I was probably one of the pioneers for free or like online video courses, actually. And yeah, it started off with just, I had a digital camera set up on an oatmeal box with no video recording, like no lighting. I had no editing skills. It was really, really ghetto. If I made a mistake, I just have to stop it and start it all over again.
Wow.
So anyway, and I was recording in 240i, if that gives you an idea of how bad it was.
Wow.
Beautiful.
So anyway, so yeah, I built those courses, and it turned out to be quite wildly successful. I rose to #1 search result in Google for basically the entire time span for like learn piano, learn music, a whole bunch of really highly competitive keyword terms in both in Google and also in YouTube search. And then my channel grew to about 300,000 or 350,000 plus subscribers, 40 million views. And yeah, I created these courses for the community. And I eventually also created a website and a forum. And the forum grew to thousands of members, and eventually it got overrun by spam bots, and I couldn't stop them with the tools back then. So I had to actually suspend new accounts, and that sort of got things to kind of get killed back slowly. But anyway, so moving forward, what ended up happening is I didn't die, which was good. I ended up regaining my health. I had to change quite a few things. But what ended up happening is after I got to this certain point, I kind of felt like I fulfilled that initial mission that I wanted to give people all of these resources and information to be able to do piano, you know, on their own, whether they didn't have the financial means or they just lived in a really geographical isolating area. So what ended up happening was after I finished that, I took a step back and I really kind of asked myself, like, what do I want to do now? And so I went through a few things. I did professional photography for a while, but then I started to really, it didn't really, I felt like something was missing. And what I really cared about was social change. And I started to realize like business was a vehicle that you could use to actually, it's the most powerful vehicle that we have in society today that allows you to affect societal change and basically change the world, hopefully in a positive way. So I started really diving into business. So I studied, lean startup and entrepreneurship and business courses and marketing and finance and even accounting, which, yeah. So there's all this stuff. But then what ended up happening is I heard about crypto first, obviously back in like 2013-ish about Bitcoin. But then it wasn't until I heard about smart contracts and DApps, with the Ethereum ecosystem, where I started to really get interested in being like, you could actually change, like you could do more stuff than you can do with traditional kind of businesses. I started getting the wheel turning in my head. And so then later I heard about DACs, and that got me even more interested. And then when EOS came out in 2017 in the summer, I was already on Steemit. So I heard about EOS pretty early on. I think it was right around when it was first announced. And I was just like, oh man, this is amazing. So I was just like, so I really followed EOS all the way through. I was, really interested in DACs and was following it very, very closely. I remember when Dan announced IPFS stuff back in the fall, and I was like, whoa, this is going to be like amazing. So, so yeah, I just basically been following it all the way through there. And then when I heard about EOSDAC, I was like, yes, this is exactly what I want to be involved with. So I kind of joined up with them, and basically I got on the launch team before the airdrop in late March, early April. And so then I got involved with obviously their YouTube department, because that's one of my expertise. But also I took some of the project management and business knowledge that I've acquired over the last few years and applied it to the ops team. So basically solving pain points within the DAC to basically help organizational structure. And then also just community engagements and all that other kind of stuff. And then I also made that, I also took my education background, because I also studied pedagogy, and I've taught piano for over a decade at this point. I'm kind of winding that down as I'm getting more busy with other projects. But anyway, yeah, so I've basically taken that knowledge, that educator mentality, and then I've applied it to EOSDAC to basically help people understand more complex topics. So that big video that I did was, what is a DAC? Mm-hmm. And that took about 150 hours of work or so to plow through. Wow. There's about 50-ish hours of initial research that I did. And that was actually, it was very, very scattered and very, very there was no agreement on the topic. So like, what is a DAC? Well, there was like 5 or 6 different sources saying different things. And it was fun to try to make a coherent picture about what a DAC is, because it's still so early, right? So yeah, so that's a little bit about me. And then how I got really like why I like DACs. I guess the biggest driver for me is that it still comes back to what I was feeling in the early days about business, is that business is a vehicle for change. And so DACs I see as just basically like a 2.0 version of organizations and corporations, like the standard kind of models that we have today. But DACs are basically like smart organizations or digital. And so what they do is they give you all those abilities that blockchain gives you, and also smart contracts like transparency, auditability. You can program them. They're really good for building tokenized token economics and a whole bunch of other, like I could go on, but that's already in the video. So yeah, so bringing all those things in, it's like, wow, this is seriously like the future. So obviously I had to get involved, and I'm super excited to see what DACs can do. So it's yeah.
What can you tell the viewers about how would you explain it to them? Obviously you've done 150 hours of video, or pared that down to a 30-minute video, but boil it down to like maybe like a 2-minute thing about the difference between a DAC and a traditional company.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. That's what a lot of people just don't get is they're like, what is a DAC? Like I
Right.
keep hearing this thing, but what actually is it? So I think the most simple explanation I can boil it down to is something this simple. DACs are what we get when we apply the abilities that blockchain and smart contracts give to us with the way groups of people work together. So it's basically take all the abilities that we get with these technologies and then apply it to actual people. So there is a governance aspect in there as well. So DACs help the governance of how these people work together. So that's the most simple explanation I could give you.
What have you learned from the airdrop till now? How do you interact with your token holders? And what have you learned that you probably didn't expect?
Oh man, that's an interesting question. Well, the airdrop for one, it was basically 2 airdrops, and then the fact that we had to migrate the tokens over made it extremely chaotic. There's people like, oh, what do I do if I left my tokens in a DEX contract locked into an Ethereum that's like frozen and you can't even really access it? So I guess what I learned about it is, I mean, at this point, what you also have to consider too is that since we're working on EOSDAC, we technically haven't actually launched the DAC until all the smart contracts are in play. And so basically, if you really want to say, there's no working DAC exactly yet because we have tokens, but we don't have a process for actually voting in custodians. We don't have an interface for token holders to interact with. That's all being built out right now. Like literally, we just had a call today about the progress reports on that, and it's looking really awesome. But as far as just interacting with a DAC is, I think what's really interesting is just how open and transparent it is. You have all these people across the world who can instantly, get involved in a project. So you get, it allows you to build a community so much stronger than you used to be able to in the past, where people can have a really passionate, aligned incentive with you to work and help your project.
Yeah, well, I mean, we see a few of them in our community too as well. They're like, "Hey, go EOSDAC," and yeah, I'm guessing and assuming they're token holders, so their incentive is aligned with yours.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably correct, unless they're not token holders and they just want to be, or maybe they don't have tokens. But yeah, I think you're probably bang on right there.
Yeah.
What was it about? So you said DACs was kind of like business 2.0 for you, or business can affect change, but you think that the power of community can you describe that a little further as to how the average person who may hold some EOSDAC tokens, how can you see them getting involved? How would they be able to jump in and become part of the DAC more so in the future when the tools are up and going?
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so what we will have coming up pretty soon is basically this UI where you can basically interact and you can vote in custodians. So right away, you have a direct say in how the operations play out, in a sense, because you can you could even nominate yourself to be a custodian, and then you can influence the direction of the DAC. So that's thing number one. But thing number two is that everything's open to anyone, meaning anyone can submit a worker proposal. So right now, like I started out doing the media, but as we're moving towards a DAC, any person can just decide, be like, hey, I want to make a video on this topic. I'm going to submit a worker proposal. And so all you need is at least one EOSDAC token to interact as a member. So it really opens everything up where it's very like community focused instead of being very closed. And that's one of the hard things is you have to take like legacy business models that you were thinking of before, and then you have to think, well, how do they apply and fit into this new model that we're establishing with DACs? And I think, actually, if you don't mind me going a little bit off topic but into another direction with DACs, is that I think to how DACs change everything is that there's a digital foundation. And so this is something I was thinking about quite a bit, about trying to think about what really changes DACs, is that, right now, corporations as they're set up right now is in the first principle sort of way, paper is underlying everything. You have a government that takes articles of incorporation and then it puts it into its registry or whatever it's doing in that specific government. And then everything is referenced back to that piece of paper, just like a birth certificate would be for someone's identity. What I think changes with DACs actually is that now, instead of a piece of paper, it's literally like bits of information, ones and zeros, that's stored decentralized across the entire nodes network of EOS. So now you don't have one central point of failure, and also it's digital from its very foundation, meaning literally you can start applying auditability, and you can start applying programmability, goal seeking, transparency right from the very, very, very base level. So there's almost no area where it needs to be opaque.
What's the goal seeking part? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, sure. Think of like a car, like an autonomous car. You hop in a Tesla and you say, take me over here. I want to go to Starbucks or something, right? And so then it's like, yes, I will take you to Starbucks, and then it drives over.
Yeah.
So it's autonomous in the sense that it figures out how to get there, but it's basically directively autonomous in the sense that you told it what you want to do. So with a DAC, people could set it up in the future where they tell the DAC the goal that they want to optimize for, and then the DAC uses its own. It could even have an AI inside it one day that basically does what the token holders tell it to do. So there's a lot of really interesting things that can get put into a DAC. That it could be even humans that do this goal seeking, but it could also be automated throughout the entire. Like you could have little bits of automation anywhere it makes sense. If it makes sense to automate the interaction between two people and turn it into code, you can do that.
And Andrew, can you give folks a basic idea? So we have traditional companies, and they have shareholders and elected board of directors. Can you talk to how EOSDAC is a little bit different, or how that would all work? I mean, I know that the early stages will be looking somewhat similar to that, and then as we go further down the line, we'll get into the AI and whatnot, those fancier tools. But can you describe the differences for folks who are sort of unfamiliar?
Yeah, actually, this is a very, very interesting topic that also has some legal issues because DACs are not considered legal entities at this point, because obviously they're so new. So at this stage, we have token holders, which are not really shareholders because there's no ownership as far as dividends coming in guaranteed. However, the custodians sort of do act a little bit like a board of directors in the fact that they're given instructions by being voted in, and then they carry out operations. So there's still, I think with EOSDAC in its current form, there's a lot of similarities as far as the older structure. But I've been thinking about a lot of governance issues that I'd like to change with this kind of stuff, where I'm still working on the models in my head kind of thing. I'm not ready to publish them publicly because they might have some problems still. It turns out it's very complicated to completely change the stuff. But what you're seeing is with DACs now, we have this blank slate where we can inject any DNA that we want to. Like, do we want transparency to be the norm? Do we want inclusiveness to be the norm? Mm-hmm. And just like when airlines were first built, right? You think about now, there's this whole culture of being in an airline. The flight stewardesses dress a certain way. The pilots have a certain jacket. That was all decided when it was first being set up. It could have easily been set up like a train culture or like a bus depot culture, but instead it was set up very premium, right? So that DNA that was baked in right from the beginning, that influenced things all along the way. Whereas with DACs, I think we, again, have the same opportunity where we have this opportunity to build a new kind of DNA and really inject it in. And so do we transfer the old corporate DNA right in with all its problems? Or do we think of, okay, these are problems such as governance by full out wealth. That might not be the best model to use, because then you have whales influencing things that they might not be totally informed or have the skills on. Kind of like if you had a silent investor, or let's say you had an investor in your company, in your tech company, and the investor's like, hey, I've got like $50 million to throw in your startup. And then they're like, by the way, because I put $50 million in, I'm going to vote myself in as CTO, even though I don't know how to write any code. So there is an aspect where I think, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ray Dalio and his believability weighted decision-making.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think that is a really positive way forward. And I also, I've also come up with this own method too, which I don't know if I should go into full detail, but basically it's where voters kind of set the direction that they want the organization to take, and then use algorithms, protocols to actually affect those changes. So people still get to decide like, hey, we want to go in this direction, but at the same time, it's done as efficiently as possible with as little corruption as possible.
Nice. I love it. Yeah. I remember I heard one video from Brendan Bloomer, the CEO of Block One, of course, and he was talking about fractal DACs in the future, way off in terms of DACs work. Can you sort of describe how that might look? It's kind of a complex topic, I guess, but he was talking about how, for example, EOS is a DAC, right? But then we may have a governance layer DAC on top of that, or we may have, for example, a marketing arm DAP on top, or DAC rather, on top of EOS itself. Can you sort of go into detail about how that might look?
Yeah. Now that is a totally new paradigm, because that would be like making a corporation within a corporation, or corporations linked together in today's terms. But yeah, fractal DACs, and you could have DACs within DACs, DACs linked to other DACs. You could have parent-child DAC relationships. Yeah, so with this, it opens up a whole new kind of range of possibilities that it might be very difficult to foresee how this is going to look, just because we as a civilization tend to really think of really creative ways to do stuff. Like, just look at, like if a game is released, then these weird people will crawl into a corner to find this one little thing that no one else would think to go for. So it's really interesting to see what, people left to their own devices will figure out ways to do these things. But I see fractal DACs as basically having a way to codify the interaction within like a whole larger ecosystem, where basically you have this one kind of starting DAC, and then you could almost think of dominoes that go along the way, where each interaction is coded. So if this, then that, where you wouldn't see that in traditional corporations, because that's just not possible. You can't code a corporation to do something. You can't code an organization to do something. I mean, you don't have to apply it to just corporations. You can do it for like club memberships, or like even a homeowners association can be a DAC. Something else that's really interesting to me too is like cities and states. They could be DACs too. Like your city that you live in right now could be its own DAC. And then it could be, basically you could tokenize the economy of that city. And then you could have speculators buy tokens on that city if they think that city's value will go up or down, if more demand to go into that city would be possible.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you could actually have the city's governance run through smart contracts that are transparent, and then have elected custodians or whatever method that we use for governance at that time that runs the city. And city services.
Is this how we turn into the Borg?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, we're all going to get assimilated by the DAC.
Cool. Oh, sorry. Don't let me cut you off.
Oh, yeah, just that you could inflate the supply of that token. You wouldn't need to have property taxes anymore. So you would basically, or you could, I don't know, like there's so many ways you could do it, but you could pay for city services by inflating the supply. And then you could, if someone walks into the city and then they want to buy like a bagel from a bagel shop or buy a coffee, then automatically through the code, it would convert from the base kind of, let's say it's EOS, to the city token, and then the city token to, let's say, that local shop's token. So then that way there has to be these buy pressures, spikes when demand goes up. And then it would finally go into the pockets of the store owner, or even the DAC itself that's running that store. So then that way it creates the demand of the buy inside basically the shop and stuff like that. And there could be certain rules about how long those tokens have to be held for, converted, to make sure that the thing is, like, people could actually maybe one day come together, buy land, and then create a DAC and make a city on top of it. And it's just pretty sweet if you think about it. Like, DACs in a sense are not like a replacement for government per se exactly, but like they can fulfill a lot of the functions that our traditional municipality, state, and even national governments do these days. Obviously not exactly, like, we're still really early stages, but the capabilities are super, super interesting. So I'm super excited to see what we can do with this. And two, we also have to remember that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So when we're working on all this stuff, I'm constantly asking myself, like, okay, make sure that this, as much as possible, that this is going to be something that's going to create a world that I and other people are going to want to live in, not just to make some technological leap forward, but actually do it in a way that's going to benefit the common person, make everyone better off.
Well said.
Yeah, not just using a buzzword, but actually getting real value out of it.
Yeah, if it doesn't change people's lives in a positive way, then I think it's a failure. Even if we do all these new things, if we don't actually make the common person's liberty and basically ability to do things and to have a prosperous life, then I don't think that we've done the right thing. I think we've if we turn this into shackles or something that's going to hurt people, then that's a failure. And so that's part of that DNA injection thing that I talk about, is that we have to, at the base level, we need to have discussions and think very carefully about how we build these things, because they could end up having bad, unforeseen consequences because they can be so powerful. So it's a really important thing that everyone starts to get more acquainted on DACs, and because they are coming, and I think they are basically going to replace every organization and business that runs today, just because of the advantages they give us.
Yeah, that's speaking my language. I love how you put it too. We put the links to not only your lengthy video that you put out, but also the minute and a half sort of intro video. It was also very well done. You guys had an animation team, it looked like, who put that together, and that was a good video. So we linked that as well to the chat. So
okay, thanks.
Yeah. I'm curious actually about the EOSDAC Constitution. We've heard rumors about it. It's a little off topic, but I know, is it still in the works? Is it coming out?
It's been published on our site for quite a while, actually.
Oh, good.
You go to the site, EOSDAC.io, and then you go to the operations page. You'll see, if you scroll down, you'll see the Constitution. It's got a kind of a preview thing where you can read it there, but it's much easier if you click it and then go into the full Google Doc, and then you can view the entire Constitution right there.
Okay, that's great. Excellent. Didn't even know. Is this the same kind of thing where if people are trying to transfer the tokens, or eventually when they vote with the EOSDAC tokens, they'll have to accept this Constitution, similar to how EOS is doing it right now?
We're doing it a little differently, but not too differently either. So basically, if you hold a token, that doesn't mean you're actually a member yet. What you actually have to do is do what we call member registration. So we have a specific function to call called member reg, I believe it's called, or it might be reg member, but I'm pretty sure it's member reg. And so you register as a member, and it checks to make sure that you have EOSDAC token balance. And so as long as you have at least one, you can be a registered member. So it's a way to kind of activate your tokens. And so basically then you're an active member, and then you can basically share in all the benefits that EOSDAC basically has to offer there. So in that, you would accept the Constitution as well. But if you accepted the Constitution and then let's say you didn't like it, right, you could vote to get someone in to change it. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily locked. It's totally open to whatever the token holders want to do. Whatever the registered members really want to happen, that's basically what can get done. Because it's in the hands of the community, not just some like iron-fisted closed group. So yeah, that's actually one of the things I like about EOSDAC as a BP, is that it's like EOS itself is decentralized, but then the actual block producers, they're not all decentralized. So by decentralizing the decentralized system, adding a second layer of decentralization, I think it helps keep the block producers more accountable and basically community driven and focused. Well
said. Yeah, there's that fractal DAC example that you guys are already setting. So it's pretty cool. So yeah, thank you very much, Andrew, for coming on and educating. And you have a great backstory too. I mean, we've met a lot of cool people in EOS, but you're up there. It was very interesting to hear from you about your story. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Andrew. It was a pleasure having you on.
Pleasure to be here. Take care, guys.
See ya.
Yeah.
Well, Bluejays, I don't know about you, but I've never weighed 115 pounds. It's been a long time. Yeah. After what he went through, he was describing that. Yeah.
Concert pianist, 6 hours a day of practicing. Wow.
I bet that. Yeah. I've never tried to become a concert pianist, but I guess that's part of the deal if you want to get there.
Yeah, it's like a full-time job. You literally need to practice all day, and that's your life. So it's not like a hobby anymore. It's like that's my life. I had a friend in high school who was thinking of becoming one, and he had to make the decision pretty early on. It's like, do I want to go there, or do I just want to go to college? It's like two different things. So
it reminds me of the professional sports person. Sometimes you read about them. They're like, oh, they could choose between baseball or football. And they chose football, of course, because they couldn't do both, right? They couldn't focus on both. They have to spend so many hours in the weight room and practicing throws or whatever the case is. Yeah, I mean, that was interesting. I was surprised to to hear his background. But it's kind of a nice segue into DACs and how much he believes in EOS, and it's an interesting thing. Yeah. So Bluejays, let's do some news. Let's jump into that for a little bit. We have EOS Rio coming on in a little bit. They have some new tools they want to show us. For now, we'll discuss the news. Let's see here. So we talk about, first of all, let's jump in. Let's look at the stats here, Bluejays. I'll pull up the screen.
Oh, the voting portal?
Well, this is the block producer rankings right now.
Okay.
So we have New York #1. They've been there for a few days now. And Bitfinex, of course, Canada, Start EOS. So there's a few folks. There's Huobi, EOS Store, Liquid EOS. They had a, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But down here, EOS Cleaner. So this has been kind of a recent news item. That's why we bring them up. They have been plagiarizing other block producer candidates' websites. And they also put out a Steemit post this morning that was kind of laughing at the whole ecosystem. They put out a mock intro to themselves, right? Because they came out of nowhere. So EOS Cleaner, maybe 2 weeks ago or so, they came out of nowhere and just didn't have a website. They got voted into the top 21 by some whales. And then after the fact, they put up a website, which, as we just said, we found out today, someone pointed out that they've been plagiarized. Like all the different transparency statements, they plagiarized directly from another block producer candidate. And then their community project statement, they also directly plagiarized from another block producer candidate, a different one. So all their stuff on their website is just plagiarized, right? I mean, this is not fun to talk about, but it is part of the deal, right? So they're in the top 21, and they're completely disregarding everything. And then they've also supposedly, possibly put out this mock post telling us that they're taking our money, or telling EOS that they're taking our money. So, Bluejays, have you read this Steemit post that came out?
I have not, but it sounds pretty cool. I'm gonna take a look at it. Yeah, so interesting, guys. This is a test of our community. So, good luck. What is this saying? Oh my gosh. Yeah. So please vote for us so we can take your money. Thank you, EOS Cleaner. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you are against this, you should go change your vote. You know, I don't know if many folks here have voted for EOS Cleaner because, like we said, they came out of nowhere and some whales voted them in. I guess some folks are in it. Of course, there have been some questions earlier as to whether this was actually a real post or whether someone just was messing around and spoofed EOS Cleaner. However, in the JSON file for the BP, they did have this particular Steemit account listed as their Steemit account earlier today, and then they changed it earlier today, and now they have a different Steemit account up there, which is currently blank. So, I mean, this is all, it's hard to say, but their website says enough, right? The fact that all their website is plagiarized from other block producer candidates, they're not a good actor, right? They do need to be voted out since they're clearly not playing by the rules, and they're possibly even shoving it back in our faces. So, the next steps, Bluejays, I mean, what can be done to help fix this, you think?
Nothing. We can only basically just educate our token holders. Hopefully people realize that having block producers which are healthy for the ecosystem will be healthy for the ecosystem, is in their own interest. So if you believe EOS Cleaner is healthy for our ecosystem, then vote for them. If you don't, then vote for someone better. That's all I can say. That's the way the system works. You're directly incentivized with your tokens to vote for whoever you feel is best. And if you feel that person is best or that BP is best, then who are we to disagree? If that BP ends up causing so many issues that the value of the chain or the security is affected, then then that token holder who's voting for them is going to be directly impacted. So I don't know what to say.
Yeah, some folks are waiting for Block 1 to come in and vote with their 100 million tokens. Presumably, they would not vote for EOS Cleaner,
right?
Given the facts that we do know that the plagiarized website is a big one. So we'll have to just wait for the Dan Hammer, as you called it before.
Yeah.
And possibly Dan and Block 1 will vote for the good block producer candidates who are following the block producer reg producer agreement and are also following the constitution that is currently in place. So we'll see how that works out. Now here comes EOS Rio, and actually Elastic is coming as well. They are working together on a new project to help with block producer candidate information. So, hey guys, hello everybody.
Hey, Kevin.
Hey guys.
Long time no see, right?
Yeah.
Kev Bluejays.
Hey.
This is Thiago. He's right behind me.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Hi, Tiago. Let's say you guys have had an office upgrade since we last saw you on the launch party. I think you were in the dungeon last time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We were locked in the basement, right?
In the basement. Yeah. It's making it happen.
Sorry. Just wait.
So what have you guys been up to?
So we wanted today show a little bit more about the wallet, how this is evolving, and Thiago will do a quick demo about the tool that we are developing that will help all block producers to monitor their nodes and all the health of the EOS network. And I think we should start with that and then go to the wallet that's all the material. So, yeah, Thiago.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, introduce yourself, right?
Yes, sure. So I am, I'm Thiago Souza. I am support engineer at Elastic. So just to make an official statement, there's not really any official relationship between EOS Rio and Elastic. Okay, it's just that I work from the co-working space, and I know the guys, and it just happened that I help them with that. All right, so I was discussing with Igor some ideas how we could use the stack for start monitoring stuff and see, to increase the visibility of what's going on and start doing cool stuff. So we started with very raw, very simple stuff, which is launching an Elasticsearch cluster in our Elastic Cloud and have a simple log stash just doing basic processing of the logs and also collecting metrics from the host. Okay, so I think it's better if I get the hands dirty a little bit and start showing some stuff.
Sounds good to us. Yeah.
Yeah, let's just give me a second.
And the website is elastic.co. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the company. Okay, so that's the company that I work for, and it's the official company behind the Elastic Stack, which is open source. And I have a lot of experience with this. I work this the whole week, so it's quite easy for me to deploy that, and I'm helping them. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yeah.
All right, so for those that are not aware with Elasticstack, this is Kibana, okay? This is the raw discover tab that allows you to see the raw data that the stack is collecting, okay? So here what we have is the basic log parsing, okay? So let me show you a simple document. So here's what's being collected. I'll go into the details a little bit further, but here's basically what's being collected. We have part of the log here that is produced. Another part of the log is already parsed. So here we tell which program that generated the log. So here the log stash processing this already identifies it's a signed block. So it adds metadata like timestamp that was signed, the latency, the hash, and who signed it, blah, blah. Okay. It also tags with a few important things. For instance, the host name, which I'm just hijacking the structure here to assign specific information. So I'm using the host name here to actually tag which block producer is sending the log. Because I discussed with Igor that the block producers does not really want to publish their IPs or whatsoever. So this I will show a little bit later, but this comes from a certificate. Okay, so the block producer will be provided a certificate that will generate the certificate for them, and it will have that the name of the block producer in that certificate. Okay, the block producer will also have an option to tell which node, any random name, it can use just to tag that message specifically, so they can have more control over the log. Okay, And it also tags what type of message it is, but in this case, it's the logic that I built in Logstash that builds that tags it correctly. So what kind of types of messages that it identifies? You have this, which is the receive block, but also identifies when there is an exception. Okay, expanded here.
So Tiago, just 1 second.
Yes.
This JSON file is dynamically generated.
So this is actually comes from the other side of the stack, which is the bits, the bits component. Okay, I'll get there soon.
Okay.
I'm just presenting you all this information that we collect. Okay, and what we do with this, we start building visualizations out of it. Okay, we have two sets of visualizations here. One is the metrics from the hosts, which we can. I can show you a little bit here. Let me open here the metrics if my internet allows. Yeah, so this is running in a very small Elasticsearch cluster. We intend to increase it so it's faster. Okay, so here are we start collecting metrics using one of the components of the stack, which is called the metric bit. Okay, I'll just reduce here the window for the last hour so it loads faster.
Okay. So just for you guys to, because I think it's getting a little too technical. I don't know, Kevin. So
yeah, just okay. So I won't go further. Just to show that we are collecting several information from the node, including metrics. But the other cool part about EOS itself is about those logs. Okay, so here, for instance, we can identify the latency of the block producing. Okay, so we can find interesting stuff. Let's look back 7 days in the past.
Yeah, the whole goal of this project, which we are calling Hyperion, is to allow all the block producers to get quick alerts of what's going on in the network and possibly identify problems that one entity alone cannot identify. And for instance, now on the EOS network, we have a schedule of block producers. So it's just alphabetical order schedule. So every time you know who is coming after you in the schedule of the block that needs to be produced. And the goal is that using a tool that collectively aggregates data from all nodes in the network, we are able to build optimized schedule and go from create an optimal route around the world that says whose producer is the best one to go after another. And then this can greatly optimize the efficiency of the network and the efficiency of the block propagations. And not only this, but other things we could identify, like for instance, in the latency here, something happened. Could be a network issue, could be overusage in the network, excessive transactions. This helps us identify those problems.
Yeah. So another interesting thing is that this visualization here allows us to see which were the block producers for a certain time period. So for the last 7 days, these are the block producers, but we can change that. Let's put it here, for instance. So let's put it like the last week of last month. And then as soon as it loads, you get which were the block producers for that. So there it is. These were the block producers for that time period. And here you don't have the full set because that's precisely when we started to collect. Okay.
So is the point, Igor, is to use this as a tool for voters to use while they're voting?
Yeah, not only for voters. Yeah, for voters is really interesting also because we can measure the performance of the nodes somehow. Actually, there are things like how much memory the node has installed. If he decides to publish that data with metric bits, we can know how much memory is installed in the system. Cham, if you scroll there, there's a scroll down a little bit. No, just scroll down.
Okay. Yeah, it's here.
Yeah, here you click at something. So you can see the memory usage.
I just accidentally. There it is.
So you can see the actual memory usage from the EOS network. Now we have just 2 gigabytes of memory usage. So you just know that the RAM speculation is going to outrageous levels, and people are just speculating. And the red area there show how much memory is actually used in the process, right? And yeah, we have other data.
You can know when the situation gets too critical.
Exactly. So for now, we are only monitoring our own nodes, but we are planning to get other block producers to have the certificate and publish their information. This will be a totally open source project, and nothing paid or nothing. So Elastic is an open source tool, and we are doing everything as open source.
So I see you're sort of coming up with a standard for everyone to use for publishing their metadata.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, that's the idea, and we are setting up a way using certificates, so we can make sure that we identify precisely which are the block producer, and the block producer also trusts the destination that they're sending the data. So these are all guaranteed certificates.
Yeah, so somebody that is not a known block producer wouldn't be publishing anything to the cloud just to scramble things.
Yeah, to keep things clean, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, this is amazing, guys. I don't know about you, Kevin, but I'm a data guy and I like looking at charts.
I love it. Yeah, we definitely need more tools like this. As we just recently talked about the block producer compliance issues, and it'd be nice to have more ways to keep up with what the block producers are actually producing and what's been happening. This is good.
This way, token holders can also see what's happening right with the network and if their vote is counted. Right?
Yeah. So our goal now is to make this more accessible, create like a nice website to show those charts and explain things a little bit more, and also to create like a tutorial for other block producers that are interested in publishing their data to also join the network. And they can collaborate by hosting Logstash nodes, right, Chuck?
Yeah, exactly.
So they can host their own Logstash processing nodes. And if they don't want to vote, it's okay. They can just push to our nodes, and we can do it like that.
So they would need to have their own agent on their servers?
Yeah, if they just want the agent is really small, right? But the agent needs to publish to Logstash nodes that do the log parsing.
Yeah.
And that can be heavier, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is similar to what in the industry.
We are waiting for Block One to publish pull request to merge a pull request that we did. So they in one of the logging tools that we had to improve the timestamp of the logging to allow people the default EOS node EOS application to publish standard log for everyone. Because right now the timestamp it was in a different format, and we would have to modify each producer node. So after Block One merges that request that we did, it will be easier for every BP to join.
Very cool.
This is great. Yeah, I love it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. If you have questions, please. We just dumped a lot of information there.
I guess also, so these are the dashboard. This dashboard is something that you came up with according to the fields that are in your JSON file.
Exactly.
But it's not limited to just these dashboards. It's whatever we can do, like a top 10 something.
Yeah. So let me show you here. You start with visualization, and then you have all these types of visualization, including Vega, which is very powerful visualization. You can pretty much do anything with it. But yeah, I mean, the only limitation is how you structure the information. But as soon as you figure out what kind of visualization you want to build, we just slice and dice the data to make the visualization work. That is quite straightforward.
I'm sort of a Splunk whiz, so I know where you're coming from here. But,
yes, Splunk has some of these. Of course, they're really strong on that field, but Splunk is really expensive.
Yeah. And this, of course, is open source. So
yeah, this is open source, and the fact that we are running in Elastic Cloud, it allows us with access to a few commercial features, like, for instance, ability to put it in full screen, for instance, that only comes in. Yeah, you think this is not really. Yeah, it is commercial feature. Yes. Yeah, but you think this is not important, but it is. There are other stuff like the Vega. I think the Vega only comes with the commercial features. Yeah, but to me, it's all the same, to be honest. But I know that by running in Elastic Cloud, you get access. And there is one important feature that is coming in Elastic Cloud, which is the machine learning plugin.
Yeah.
So the machine learning allows running machine learning algorithms over time series data. So the cool thing that you can do with it is when you have this sort of situation here, okay, you have many metrics, and block producers are coming in and going away, and they will have their own latency. Okay, so we can use machine learning to learn the trend of the time series and start alerting when a certain point goes off the pattern. So, for instance, you have this case here, right? So machine learning would be easily find this as anomalous and start alerting or whatever. Okay, this is really useful when you have tons of metrics and you cannot really set a threshold, because the threshold keeps just changing and changing depending on what time of day, depending on what is the block, which is the block producer. So it would be crazy to set a static threshold. So machine learning helps with this situation. It should be coming really soon. I'm not allowed to tell when, but it's soon. And it will be available at a much more accessible price in Elastic Cloud.
Yeah. We wanted to talk a little bit about the wallet. There is still time, right?
Yeah, we'd love to hear more about the wallet. A lot of folks are actually in chat are talking about the wallet too. They want to
Yeah. So,
Okay.
in
All good?
yeah, I think I'll go.
All right, so I'm just stop sharing it.
This, you want to show the GitHub or something GitHub? But I'm going to
Okay, yeah, I can. The GitHub.
No. For our GitHub, there's nothing there, right?
No, there is. Yes, there is.
It's open in another tab.
He forgot to tell.
So here, it's just really the agent. I'm going to publish this as an official Docker image, but right now it's just here in the repository, very incipient. It's basically running the metric bit, which collects all the host level metrics like CPU, memory, storage, kind of stuff, and also the file bit, which collects the node use logs. Excuse me, the node use logs, and it have a few rules, for instance, to remove the host name, to identify when there is multiple lines logged is very important. Just basic stuff. So the block producer will just pull this Docker image, and that's it.
Cool. Yeah, we've sent over the GitHub link to the chat as well, so they can start looking into it. Hopefully, we can get some more block producers as well.
Yeah.
More block producers can jump in and vet this tool as well. And
I wish to write some README before we can actually start publishing this. So
yeah, but it's really, we cannot do it before block one, but merge our commit that our pull requests that we need them. So they already said they will merge, so maybe it's coming this week. So.
Yeah. But if other block producers want to contact us and start testing.
Okay. Yeah, we love to get people to test with us. So.
What was Block One's initial reaction to your pull request?
Oh no, actually the pull request was just to improve the logging, time logging format. So they really just say, oh, we needed to change that really.
Oh, to enable the logging.
It's just the timestamp was just non-standard, and then we make it standard. And just,
okay. So you should most likely get that approved, and then you can start the ball rolling.
Yeah, they said that 1.1 will be the release for that.
Very cool.
So let me show how the wallet's doing. This week we are working on optimizing some airdrop detection. Just to explain a little bit about this, because there has been many airdrops, and we did a algorithm to scan the network for airdrops to your account, and then we detect the contracts and build all the functionality to allow you to interact with that airdrop without you having to know the token symbol and then having to manually enter the contract name, the contract address.
Too many airdrops are happening, so we kind of
so we are actually switching backend algorithms from our proxy to work with this.
We are trying
let me show here. So I think you haven't seen the wallet actually working last time we come here, right?
I don't remember.
Yeah, you did have it on the launch show there for a little bit. I think you literally just
Okay, so now there's a lock pin to just protect your privacy.
Cool.
And then you have like support for multiple accounts here.
Yeah, we actually have a lot of accounts because we were testing, right? So we kind of created a lot of accounts.
But it works. And look, so you have your airdrops here.
Cool.
All your airdrops are detected automatically, and those that have pricing on CoinMarketCap, we list the price here to convert to. For airdrops, it's just that. But as soon as they're detected here, if you go to the Send tab, you can select anyone to transfer here. So that's work automatically. And we included, like, if you want to send tokens to someone like this, just do this, and then now we have recorded contracts. So governance people will be happy now because we are actually showing what people are agreeing to. And what's more? No, so we have on the voting, I think we didn't change much.
We put a map.
We included now a map, a live map.
We
included all the active and standby. So green here are active block producers, and yellow are standby block producers. And this is updated.
And not all block producers are in this map, just the ones that publish the right data in the VPGs.
So if maybe there are more few than 21 green, but some of them didn't publish the correct location data in the correct formats, and then they don't appear. And then we have like logos for everyone here, and
the links too.
Wow. And everything is automatically added here. Location, social links, and links to the code of conduct. And if they're producing a standby. We just improved a little bit. And
the new account.
Now I want to show a new feature that we added. That's for new users. So if you are a new user to the EOS platform, EOS ecosystem, and you don't have any EOS accounts, we created a way that allowed new users to create that. So to show you how, I will just clean all my local data here. It may close. Yeah, close. Sorry. Open again. To share again, it doesn't open again. Sorry about that. Yeah. So when you open as a new user, you have an option to request a new account, right?
Yeah, this is only if you don't have any private keys.
Yeah,
right?
not so.
You don't have any previous
what we did is like you select your account here, put some numbers, any number, okay, and then you are able to import your public keys if you generate it anywhere else, or you can generate them here. It's totally offline. We don't. It takes longer because we are actually collecting entropy from your computer to generate a more cryptographically secure key. So that's why it takes a little longer, but it's not using internet for anything. And then after you copy those keys, you generate this payload. So with this payload, which is just base 64 encoding of your public keys and your account name, you can send this to a friend, and your friend can choose to create an account for you, and maybe gift you some EOS, or they will have to delegate tokens for you in the beginning and buy RAM for you. So as this account creation process is getting a little expensive because of the RAM price, in this way you can ask for a friend to create for you, and then you can pay it back somehow. So this creates an organic process of like a ring of trust. So you create an account for a friend, your friends invite other people, and this is a way we think to
creation of accounts in EOS cost a little bit because of RAM, right? And until we reach a solution for that, we didn't want to deprive users of creating new accounts, so we thought of this organic approach.
Yeah.
And we hope to see some people in the community come forward and say that.
Yeah, I even heard about a website that is now accepting these codes, and you can just pay the website to create your account. We're not endorsing it, but people are already using this, and this.
Is that EOS, that one?
No, I don't think it's EOS. It's another EOS account creators.
Yeah, we are not saying that we recommend it or not. It's just that we didn't have time to review the code yet. So in the meantime, we're not recommended, but it looks okay.
Yeah, and until we block producers come with a good solution, like a sign-up process, something like Steemit does, I think this is a very nice way to create accounts for your friends.
This is great. Yeah, I love the new features, especially the map and everything. Of course, this is great. Yeah, helping people vote. Pretty much everything people need to know right there on the wallet. That sounds good to me. I like it.
Yes.
Yeah, and we are working hard every day to improve the wallet, but right now we are overwhelmed with demands, right? We are trying to do anything in our power to. I don't know, it's been very hard to know.
Mostly support, because we don't have many technical people that actually understand how the inner workings of the wallet does. So to solve all the doubts
But it has been a great experience, and we never expected to have such a high demand, like people using it. It's crazy.
Yeah, you guys, you look like you've had more sleep now since the launch party time, so that's good too. Glad to see that.
We aren't in the basement.
Yeah, now we're having actually time to go from home to the office. So
that's good.
Before there wasn't enough time.
No more sleeping on top of the file cabinets, huh? That's good.
Sure.
Well, yeah, congratulations, guys, on being an elected top 21 block producer, and you guys' tools are great. Everyone's a big fan, so thank you. And the new Hyperion tool looks awesome too. I mean, and actually,
go ahead. To talk more about Hyperion in Korea in the EOS conference.
Yeah, Blockchain Week is coming.
Blockchain Week is coming, and we hope to get more news ready by then.
That starts the 17th or so, 18th maybe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, the EOS conference is 19, 20, and 21.
Okay.
Great.
That sounds great. Because actually, Gustavo, in the chat, he was asking if you guys have a Steemit post or some other information he could read more about Hyperion. So
yeah, we are making this ready. We just wanted to do a little sneak peek for EOS Go, but we are actually getting the piece together so we can onboard people easily.
Thanks for doing this, guys, because this is great. I mean, the more operational data and intelligence that we have, the better performance we're going to have in the chain.
Was yesterday. So that's that issue where some was crashed about the memory was yesterday or yesterday. And really, I love to congratulate the attitude of Liquidius and Liberty Block for doing the correct producer at that time. But this is the scenario where Hyperion comes and can help them to really detect those problems earlier before it actually happened. Because if you got like an alert to show you, look, the memory is increasing and your setting is wrong, so it could just alert you if we collect more detail on that area.
So how exactly would Hyperion have detected that problem?
Well, exactly that problem was the misconfiguration for the chain-DB size on the config file. But if we should be able to publish. We want to also publish the configuration files for the producer nodes without private keys, of course. But in this way, everyone can analyze and make sure that their configuration are matching what they want to.
Okay, so basically you would have been able to see that somebody's configuration was way off.
Exactly, that everybody could. This should be transparent. They don't need to publish like private IPs or anything else, but like some basic configuration parameters that are really needed in the network. We could using Hyperion, we could publish that, and then we can keep track of memory settings and memory consumption, CPU consumption, and a lot of stuff. And most importantly, detect network issues, because we had we already detected some events that affected a certain submarine cable, for instance, and this could make the transmission worse in some region, and then you may fall into issues later. And all those stuff is useful, so we have a really good room to improve there.
Very cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, good deal. Thank you very much, guys, for coming on, giving us a sneak peek, and updating us as well on the wallet too. It's great speaking with you. Have fun in Korea too.
Right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Are you going to?
Here.
Thank you, Thiago. Actually, no, we won't make it. I was there last month. We're in May, but yeah, I love Seoul. I mean, I had a great time, so I think you guys will too. I'm sure.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Thiago. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Oh man, that was cool.
Wow, that was neat. Yeah. Just an example of, I mean, there will be a lot, this is a great first tool, and there'll be a lot more coming up to help with block producers. I mean, just help them stay on top of their stuff, and also help voters keep track of what's going on exactly. And there's Mr. Cox. Thank you, Thomas, for coming on.
Greetings. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Hey, Thomas.
Yeah. Sound good. You see you're in a different hotel room now.
Yeah. The fun never stops.
The fun never stops.
Yeah. Depending on whether I'm able to make it a week from now or not. Let's see. There'll be one of these Mondays coming up where I'll be, I think, in Shanghai.
Oh, wow.
Right.
And I have no idea what time it'll be when you're broadcasting. But if it's a reasonable time and I'm not busy, I'll come on. And if it's an unreasonable time, I'll be asleep.
Should be like 8 a.m. or something over that.
Well,
time.
7 a.m. They're 12 hours ahead of us.
Okay.
So 7 a.m. your time in Shanghai.
That might work. That might work. We'll see. But that's not for another 2 weeks.
Okay. And now, are you going to that? So EOS Rio was just talking about they're going to Korea for the summit that's coming up. Are you going too?
Oh, absolutely. Would not miss it for the world.
Sounds good. Should be fun.
So, Thomas, they had like a really cool tool that we're showing. Basically, like I don't know if you're familiar with Splunk or Elasticsearch.
I saw a little bit of it. Yeah, it just looked amazing. I think we are such a young blockchain, we are so new. There is so much that has to happen. We need reporting nodes. We need reporting tools. We need data explorers. There's so much yet to be done.
Yeah, so they're basically saying that this can help the operational excellence of the chain itself and the block producing nodes. So
good.
That's it's exciting to see all the colors. They even showed the RAM usage, so that was something interesting for people.
Well, I caught a little bit of your show earlier as I was getting checked into my room and whatnot. I know we were talking about block producers that appear to be bad actors.
Yeah.
And I've been doing a little research on cooperation in societies and rereading sections of Ostrom's book on governing the commons and so forth. And ran across, and I knew it was out there. Bettina, thank you. Kev Bluejays. He waves the book at the end.
It hasn't moved for months. It's just been on the
right
scenes.
there. Always at hand. Always at hand. Yeah, I've got the other one. I've got the Schelling book, The Strategy of Conflict, in my bag.
Okay. You have another, the Eggman now. Is that a new book?
That's just playing with nicknames.
Okay. All right.
But I was looking at the evolution of cooperation, and in fact, Matt Ridley wrote an entire book on it called "The Origins of Virtue," where he talks about how does cooperation arise in society. And there's been some recent work. I was just reading as I was preparing for today's call. Researcher Bettina Rochenbach of University of Cologne, Germany, had done, and this has been replicated. It's part of a whole series of experiments on social cooperation and when do people, cooperate or not cooperate. And it turns out it's tremendously important to allow participants in a group setting where there's a tragedy of the commons risk to be allowed to punish defectors who harm the group. And the punishments don't have to be very big. It's actually better if they're not too huge. But you can really drop cooperation to nearly 100% when you allow people to hold each other accountable in reasonable ways, not like, off with their heads kind of stuff. And that's something that I don't think everyone in our community yet realizes, is that we are running a real live experiment with real live money and real live people. And we don't get to just trot out our favorite, dare I say, libertarian, utopian thoughts and ignore the scientific research on cooperation. If we want a cooperative chain, we're going to have to embrace some gentle chastisement of people who are misbehaving. And in particular, I would point out that as ECAF and other arbitration methods are getting more fully organized and coming online, and as the block producers' capability to enforce orders comes online, people who are misbehaving today by selling their vote or buying votes can be punished later because the data is on chain. And so if I were, hypothetically, let's say I were a block producer and I was lying on my website and I was giving evidence of having bought votes, and maybe even somebody went out there and collected, decided that they would be a mole and sell their vote and collect some data to prove what was going on for later use in an action or a dispute with that person. When the block producers have the ability with the sudo command to enforce sanctions against, say, a block producer that buys votes, the people who sell their votes are also at risk. And I would urge people to read the vote producer language. When you cast your vote, you are agreeing that if you have sold your vote, you agree to allow your tokens to be confiscated. You are agreeing to that. And there's no statute of limitations on that. And so there is a very real likelihood, in my opinion, that sometime in the next few weeks or months, we're going to start seeing some pretty interesting actions that are incomprehensible on other blockchains, where block producers who perhaps are bad actors and the voters who are perhaps enabling them might find that their accounts are suddenly inaccessible. perhaps temporarily. And then their ability to vote in bad actors drops to zero for a while until they clear their names, pay their fine, or whatever turns out to be right. And the block producers themselves may have their keys reset to the null key, and their votes will drop to zero, and their income will drop to zero. And they too might have their accounts frozen in lieu of them having put up a bond. Because remember, if you don't want your account frozen and you're engaging in actions that might make people think you are liable for something, a bond fund that is surety against potential fines is a great way to keep your account liquid. People think that there are no rules right now, and that's not true. There's not very aggressive enforcement yet.
Yeah, and your answer
doesn't mean that there's no data being gathered. It doesn't mean that facts are not being created on the blockchain where they are immutable and where a reasonable suspicion of a bad action could lead you to perhaps receiving a request for information or a subpoena. There are a lot of folks who think they know what arbitration means and they mistake it for mediation. Arbitrators can issue subpoenas, and an arbitrator's subpoena can be sent to a terrestrial real-world court to be turned into a local subpoena in your jurisdiction. And if you're in any of the 158 countries around the world that are parties to the New York Agreement on International Commercial Arbitration, and the local court looks at our rules of dispute resolution and sees that it's closely related to UNCITRAL, the UN chartered list of the UN version of dispute resolution, very closely related. They'll say, yeah, sure enough, this is good. I actually interviewed a civil and criminal judge in Madrid who's a big fan of EOS, actually. He'd been a judge for like a decade or two. And I asked him about arbitration. So tell me about how this, I ended up with like a 25-minute interview, I should share it with you, where he makes it just painfully clear to the most unsophisticated EOS dabbler that we already have everything we need to do arbitration, and we are this close to having the ability to enforce arbitration outcomes. And so people who imagine that it's the Wild West and they can do whatever they want and they'll just break the rules and elect their buddies to be block producers, and the block producers don't have to follow the rules and the voters don't have to follow the rules. It may look like that for the moment. It will not continue to look like that for very long.
And Thomas, your answer brings up a couple questions, common questions that I've seen. Well, the first would certainly be, where is ECAF? What happened to ECAF? Are they doing anything? What are the next steps for them that you know of? Do you have any answer?
Well, I am one of their advisors, and I don't speak for them. They speak for themselves, and I'm sure that they'd be happy to come on and answer questions. My understanding is that they are actually hard at work working on the cases that they've already had filed with them. And they are actively training their current arbitrators and recruiting more. And we've actually found that there's a very active group of Mandarin-speaking arbitration fans who've created their own group. I'm very excited. I hope to meet some of them on my trip coming up to Shanghai. So just because it's not in a headline doesn't mean it's not happening. And I suspect that we're still in the habit of, some of us, of like reading Reddit and imagining that that's somehow an X-ray of what's actually going on. And it is absolutely not. In fact, the relationship between Reddit and what's happening on the EOS blockchain is perhaps inverse. So
could probably be said for a lot of Reddit, I'm sure.
And I do understand that there's supposed to be a public statement in the next couple of days from ECAF on what specifically they're up to. But I'm talking at a higher level of arbitration in general. It has teeth, right? When you use any command on the EOS blockchain, you are agreeing to the Constitution, which binds you to arbitration. When you cast vote producer, or when someone does it on your behalf, you are agreeing to certain rules. I would urge you to, do you have access to the vote producer command? I should have queued that up. We could read the text together and just revel in its clarity. Something to the effect of, I acknowledge that if I offer or accept or receive or give or receive anything of value in exchange for a vote, that I agree that I am liable for freezing of my account, confiscation of my tokens, and other penalties, something along those lines. It's like, it can't be any clearer. And the wheels of justice sometimes grind a little slowly. They are grinding. Oh, there's vote producer. I stipulate I have not and will not accept anything of value in exchange for these tokens on penalty of confiscation of these tokens and other penalties. So I'm not going to say that, ZB, for instance, is necessarily liable, or any of their voters, or any of the people who are investing in their mining pool, quote unquote, I'm not an arbitrator. I haven't looked at any facts here. I will say that if I were operating an operation similar to that, I would be very scared right now. And I would maybe talk to an attorney who's familiar with commercial international arbitration. And I might make sure that I was taking steps to maybe ramp down my practice, or save any ill-gotten gains so they can be returned to the people who I have taken them from. This little party of misbehavior is not long for this chain.
And you briefly mentioned sudo as well. Can you go into that just a little bit more?
Yeah, sudo. SUDO it's nicknamed after the Unix command of that name. And it is, as I understand it, and I would remind people that I am one of the least technical people in the chain. The idea behind sudo is that it is the implementation of something that we've been promising in EOS since the very first white paper, which is the ability of a supermajority, 15 of 21 active block producers, to bypass the authorization check on certain commands. And that allows you to permanently freeze an account with a single command, even then unfreeze it later, to confiscate tokens, to replace code that the owner of the code can't replace because of a bug or because they took steps to make it immutable or whatever. So all of the superpowers that we've been talking about for a year or more, which we've been promising, which are part of the differentiating attributes of our platform, are contained in the sudo. And it is a multi-sig power that if 15 of 21 block producers sign it, I believe there is or ought to be some sort of a time delay that after they do it, then the clock starts ticking on whatever the change is. And that's very important, by the way. All the big things that happen on a chain need to have time delays, they need to have double checks, they need to have safeguards. And that's why I believe sudo either does or should have a 30-day delay. We've always said that there'd be a 30-day holding queue for certain kinds of block producer actions, like moving tokens. Freezes could happen instantaneously, but not moving people's property around. So yeah, the sudo command is a big deal. It's on the GitHub repository. The source code's available to be looked at. And it is a tremendously important step forward in the maturation of our governance.
And of course, that was the intention of the development of sudo, was to do something.
Oh yeah, we've been talking. Go back to version 1 white paper from May of 2017. I mean, we describe it in detail what the block producers are supposed to be able to do. We just shipped the software without it turned on yet, and we didn't publicize what the name of it, the command was going to be that actually lets them carry that out. So we, in a way, we sort of, I liken the EOS software to a baby that was born a little bit premature. And compare it to, like, a gazelle. When gazelles are born, like within a couple of minutes, they're like frolicking around and running away from lions. And you compare it to a human baby, and our babies are just useless. They just like sit there and squall and make noise for the first months or years, or in some case 18 years of life, depending on how you raise them. And so we're much more like a human baby in terms of needing a lot of care and feeding in these early months. Don't have our teeth and claws in quite yet. We're a little more defenseless than maybe would be ideal in the crypto universe. And we're getting there.
Yeah, well said. We have a few questions too, Thomas, from the community, from folks. And someone wants to know, what's your role and mission in the EOS community now that you've left Block One? Can you talk about going forward? Yeah,
So some people were actually surprised that I left, which was odd because we've been talking about it for months. In fact, back in February is when I had my first explicit conversation with Dan Larimer about, so what do I do? Since I'm focusing more and more on governance, and clearly I want to stay involved in the governance space in the conversation, like ongoing for as long as people will listen to me. I mean, as long as there's anything to be done, as long as I can add value, I want to be doing it. And after the chain launches, Block One goes from being the author of the default governance text to a whale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's a place for me in helping to author the default settings for governance. But as soon as the chain goes live, there's no more authoring of default settings. Now there's the real settings, right? Where stuff gets real, and then the community either adopts the defaults or doesn't, and then we start iterating on what governance should be. And there's no place for me to be employed at any whale who's a participant in the chain if I'm going to be engaged in governance the way I want to be, which is facilitating conversations and trying to help people understand maybe some of the things that aren't yet as clearly understood by people because everything's so new.
Speaking of whales,
anyway, let me finish. So the plan since February was for me to exit Block One around the time of launch, which I've done. June 30th was my last day as an employee at Block One. I'm now working for a stealth startup in the EOS space, and I get to work and play in governance in my spare time as that stealth startup continues its stealthiness. And at some point, I get to talk about that. So my role is to show up and have conversations and talk to the other volunteers, as I'm now a volunteer, about the key issues we as a community are facing. In a lot of cases, explaining what I was thinking back when I wrote these drafts, or back when Dan and I were discussing what things should be, and to try to make sure that we have and continue to have a shared vision as a community of what we want governance to do and what it can and can't do. And it's just one of those things where you have to say it again and again and again. If you ever have a large family, or you're a team leader or a manager in an organization, when you tell your people 7 times something, half of them have heard it once. If you've got more than 4 or 5 kids, you know what this is like. If you've got more than 4 or 5 direct reports, you know what this is like. You can tell until you're blue in the face, and it's only when they start mocking you that you know they've heard you. It's one I teach people when I teach people how to manage engineers. That only when they start mocking you have you said it enough for it to sink in. So I'm awaiting the day. I did get mocked on Twitter. I mocked. It was June 24th. Someone directly made an ad hominem attack on me. It's the first one I got. I felt so proud. I felt like I'm just beginning to break into the big time when one person makes fun of me. Clearly, I may never be in Vitalik's or Dan's, stratospheric levels on that, but I get a little taste of it. It's kind of sweet.
Congratulations, Thomas. That's a big moment. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sure it won't last. But the important thing is that we're doing important work on governance, and my role, as I see it, is to continue to be a good listener and help people hear each other around what is the Constitution, what should it be, what is arbitration. It's astonishing levels of ignorance around what arbitration is, and it hasn't changed in 50 years. Arbitration it's the least innovative thing we have. Arbitration is settled law and has been for decades. And people act like we just invented it and foisted it on blockchain. It's bizarre. The worker proposal system is a big deal. The referendum code very big deal. And so I sit in on meetings with the volunteers working in each of these areas to try to add some continuity and ask, dumb questions, which sometimes are helpful, and answer questions about what was the intention behind X or whatever. I've still got a lot of stuff loaded in my head that are useful in those conversations.
Thomas, so the elephant in the room is Block One's vote.
Oh, there's so many elephants in this room.
Yeah,
honestly,
so it's a big room with tons of elephants in there, I guess. Yeah.
Right.
So yes, Block One has said through Dan that he said this actually long before launch is, can Block One vote its tokens and how will it vote? And he said Block One will be able to vote its tokens, just not sell them, because remember they're locked up for 10 years in slowly decreasing amounts. But locked up doesn't mean unvotable. They're actually all votable today by design. And he said that Block One will vote to protect its interests, which totally rational, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what does that mean exactly? Well, they've tipped their hand more recently that they want to come up with a list of objective criteria for block producers, and that they'll maybe cast votes for good actor block producers who meet certain criteria. And that would probably be a good service in terms of scrubbing the ranks. The downside being they've only got 30, which is why Dan is now suggesting a revision to 50 to even level the curve even further.
And that would mean everybody would get 50 votes.
Or no, that 50 parties would each get 100 million votes. Because that's the thing, is Block One has got all their tokens in a single account.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And when you vote for all your staked tokens, not half, not a quarter, all of them. They can't, so Block One, if they vote, they can't not vote with 100 million.
Okay.
There's no choice. Technically, it's just nailed down, unless they got an arbitration ruling to break the account in half and put it into two piles or something.
So for the regular,
they also have the power to do that.
For the regular voter, let's say somebody who has 10 EOS, they would get to vote for 50 people as well?
Yeah, the idea is to raise it for everybody to make 50. 50 becomes the new 30. I'm not sure how wise that is until we can get some good block producer portals set up where block producer ratings can be generated from people's preferences and from third-party verification. And then you could, tell the system what you care about, and it would offer you a list of 50 that you could copy and paste into your voting portal and make it a lot easier than trying to pick through and pick 50.
Yeah.
I mean, wow, that would be rough.
Yeah.
30's a lot. 50's.
And so Modern Liberty in the chat was asking about what is your biggest concern about EOS right now? I mean, we talk about these elephants in the room. What kind of has your attention the most?
I'm a little worried that some of our stalwarts are even our big holders certainly are maybe smaller holders, but they're active conversation partners in Telegram and other places are losing confidence in the system of constitution, guardian contract, and arbitration when it hasn't even been tested out. It's like we're not out of the harbor yet. I mean, let's sail it around a little bit before we declare it unseaworthy. Come on. I get that it's blockchain and everyone wants everything to be done immediately. I mean, the Seoul conference was planned like 2 or 3 weeks in advance, which is in any normal industry is insane. And in blockchain, it's like, oh, that's plenty of time.
Right.
It's weird. So we're a very impatient group, and I get that.
Yeah.
And I have no reason to believe that our system of constitution, Ricardian contracts, binding arbitration, and block producer superpowers won't work. And every reason to think it will. I mean, one of our big tests was, would we get enough votes for block producers to unlock the chain? And we all saw it was coming like, a million an hour or something. And it was this long, slow, that poor bottle of champagne in my fridge was so lonely.
And now we're up to 30%.
A day or two. It was almost a week.
Yeah.
And it finally got popped open, but people were like starting to freak out. It's like, it's just taking a little longer. Come on. So yeah, we'll get some arbitration rulings, and some troll on Reddit will deliberately misunderstand it. And it's like, relax. Get a good book on arbitration and read about it. There's some excellent, overviews of the arbitration process. Find a friend who's, a lawyer in his or her 50s who's sat in as an arbitrator on a commercial law case, and just ask them questions about what it's like. And you'll find out that this is settled law. It's normal. There's nothing novel about arbitration. It is extremely well understood and procedural. It's probably outside of the encryption code, probably the most solid thing we've got, actually, is the arbitration. So let's let it play out. And if you think someone's doing something wicked, file a dispute against them. And be prepared to pay a penalty if you file frivolously or maliciously. Because when you go into arbitration, you yourself are at risk. It's not like criminal law where you can be a witness and not be subject to penalties. All parties in arbitration are subject to penalties if they misbehave. So be a good actor.
Good. We'd like to hear that. We have some folks are asking about your knowledge about the RAM situation. Of course, it's a huge topic. And they're asking about yeah, go ahead.
I'm so delighted to know nothing about the RAM situation.
Okay.
I just save myself hours every day by not knowing anything about it and not trying to.
Is there any governance issues around the RAM?
None at all. None that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's software.
Yeah.
People who think code is law, they should be thrilled with the RAM situation, because that's exactly it's just running exactly the way it was coded.
Right.
It's
no Ricardian contracts for a RAM.
Well, it's the executable contracts for RAM. I don't think we wrote any Ricardian contracts for it. That was all Dan's stuff.
Okay.
Because it was technical. It wasn't considered something that I needed to be particularly involved in. And it was kind of late breaking. I think it would have been maybe wiser if we'd run it on a test net for a while, but the clock was ticking. So we put it in production, maybe in retrospect with less testing in terms of, how people use the net market.
Yeah.
And we now wish we had. And yeah, we can add more RAM and see what happens. And block producers can upgrade their systems and add more RAM, and we'll see what happens. And, at some point we'll have multi-threaded systems with gobs of RAM, and at some point we'll come up with, the processes by which inter-blockchain communication happens on a practical level, which I don't think anybody understands yet.
Yeah.
The practical implications of inter-blockchain communication and side chains. But that's just going to completely blow open the doors to creativity and scaling in ways none of us can understand today.
Right.
Yeah, well said. No, it would have been hard to simulate this RAM market, I think, before launch, given the speculation we're seeing. But yeah,
the fact that RAM is trading on an exchange is hilarious. And I say that as someone who owns exactly 4K of RAM, because that's how much was allocated to my account. Or maybe it's 8 since I made a second account. It's like I clearly have no skin in that game, so I'm far enough away from it that it's merely funny. And if it's hurting you, I'm sorry. If it's hurting you, I'm very sorry, but I don't understand it. I'm not trying to.
Sounds good. And Thomas, so we have someone was asking, who gave Thomas Cox the power to make the rules was kind of the question, which is an interesting question, I feel.
Yeah, it was kind of a group decision. We're like, okay, we need to have some kind of a default constitution, don't we? Don't we need to write some Ricardian contracts for these system contracts? Don't we? I mean, we said it in the white paper. I mean, Dan decreed that. It's always been at the plan, but like, who's going to do the work? And that's the great thing about not being able to write C++ code is I had nothing useful to do. So it's like, well, I've run for governor. I've been chairman of a state political party. I've been interested in politics and policy making. I offered a complete budget for the state of Oregon at one point. I sat in on the, God, I can't remember the name of it now. It was a government accountability agency. I've been on the boards of numerous self-governing organizations. I'm familiar with politics. Bachelor's in psychology. So I felt like I'm not unqualified to solicit a lot of help and do a default. So I pulled up everything Dan had ever written on the Constitution, including a couple of draft constitutions. And General Counsel for Block 1, Lee, had written his own, like de novo. It was beautiful. And we've got 3 or 4 others. And then there's a website you can go to that it's a reference site, and it has every national constitution in existence on the planet today translated into English. And it's searchable. So you can ask, like, put in something like property rights, and it'll give you across nations what their constitutions say about property rights. It is amazing. I spent a lot of time on that site. And wrote drafts and solicited input, and I kind of curated the creation process of the draft constitution, and then wrote a whole series of articles on EOS Go, where I said, so here's the intention, and here's the language, and then here's what we think about that language, and what do you think? And got a ton of input, and then the community kind of just took it over there in the last couple of days before launch, and Mal of EOS Rio, he and his staff did heroic work of asking for a last round of suggestions and changes, and there were some changes at the last minute, all of which are documented in EOS Go postings and I think some Steam posts as well. And ultimately, the real choice is, if you can, since anyone can launch a copy of the chain. I mean, the Genesis block was public, the code was public. You could write your own constitution, launch a chain, and say, come over here, my chain's better because the constitution's better. And where the voters went was the current mainnet, which had the one that I helped to draft based on Dan's inputs in early work, and that was curated through the community, and then went through the hands of the group that Mal led, the EOS General Assembly, they call themselves. So that was a big deal. And now that we're ready to make some learnings and take the default constitution, the interim constitution, the one that you get when you first fire up the chain because you can't vote yet. You can't ratify it because there's no mechanism for ratifying. As soon as you have a mechanism for ratifying, you either ratify the one you've got or you replace it with another one that gets more votes. And a week or so ago, Dan Larimer suggested one and actually wrote a version 2 constitution, which I looked at very carefully, and I think is absolutely horrible because he and I have different visions. And I look forward to arguing the merits of my position. And I realized that we've never gotten much of any Korean or Chinese token holder input on the Constitution. And here's this upcoming event in Seoul and the following one in Shanghai. So I plan to very methodically ask anybody that's showing up there and anybody they know to contribute yet more ideas so that I can field for the upcoming referendum a version 3 constitution that merges version 1, Dan's version 2, and then all the community input we can get our hands on. And hopefully it doesn't turn into a Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thomas, there was a question in the chat regarding the approach for ECAF where we can freeze accounts with the other side, the hacker agreeing to, or when the arbitration is only can happen when one or both parties agree. So what's your approach there? What is your stance?
Normally, if there was a dispute over an account on the mainnet, obviously all the disputants have to be parties to the mainnet and parties to the Constitution. And the exception is during Genesis, when you might have a true owner who hasn't yet shown up on chain, and then another person who claims to be the owner who's on the chain contesting ownership. And it's a little tricky. How do you say that both parties agreed to mediation? It's a very good question. Now, if you say that they haven't both agreed to mediation, then you just don't take the case as a mediator. and it just sits there as disputed, or you just let it go. And you know, if it was stolen, it was stolen pre-Genesis, which technically is true, right? I mean, that's when all these thefts occurred, was before launch, during the registration phase or before. And maybe you just say, well, crypto's an unforgiving space, and you know, at least it isn't the 300 million that was stolen, you know, from Ethereum, or the $500 million worth of NIM that was stolen. It's not of that magnitude, and it's sad, and that's really, it's too bad. Be more careful, I guess, is what you'd say to people. And I think, as I understand the chronology, and I wasn't directly involved in this, there was a request made to ECAF to freeze the accounts. The arbitrator involved decided, I think probably correctly, from what I know, that there wasn't proof that all the parties were on chain, and therefore there wasn't proof all the parties had agreed to arbitration, and so declined jurisdiction. And then the block producers felt that it was appropriate for them to use their emergency powers, which they have under the Constitution and the Ricardian contracts. They're allowed to take emergency action. And they felt that it was justified. And so they said, here's 27 people who have asked for their own accounts to be frozen. They've each submitted identity. They've each submitted to a video deposition. They've each, you know, filed a filing fee, or will be filing a filing fee. And they're basically putting themselves at great risk. And so if they said freeze my account, but it's not really their account, they've made it very easy to track them down. And so if they're hurting somebody else by freezing this account, the person who got hurt can totally come after them now, because they've self-identified. They've gotten rid of all their anonymity or pseudonymity. And so that's a pretty big step. And the block producers chose to act. And then at that point, the arbitrator said, well, when the block producers do something on the chain, clearly arbitration has jurisdiction over that. And so now it had changed from a case where there might not be jurisdiction to a case where there totally was jurisdiction for ECAP. And that's a nuance that's lost on a lot of people. You'll find that nuance is often lost on Reddit. It's not a nuancey kind of place. Oh well. But from what I've been able to follow, it followed very careful thinking and arguably correct reasoning. That because the block producers had acted, that ECAF then had jurisdiction to rule on what had been done. And what had been done was people asking for their own accounts to be frozen and for them to self-identify and put themselves at risk if they were bad actors when they did that. So, and of course that immediately got turned into anyone's account can be frozen at random. No, you can freeze your own. If you persuade somebody that you're you, and go to great lengths to persuade them and make yourself very vulnerable. Okay, but that's not nearly as scary of a boogeyman as, you know, oh, anybody's account can be frozen at random. Whatever. Idiocy.
Okay. Right, so we look forward to having more governance in version 3, I think.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. Dan's proposed doing away with all arbitration at what he calls level 1 and having it all be moved to this new level 2, the staff level, which flies in the face of literally everything ever done in experimental economics and psychology on how cooperation works. And we would see not one or two purchased block producers, but all of them would become corrupt almost immediately.
Yeah.
And the other challenge then is that the sudo command operates at layer 1. And so if I can buy and sell votes, install 15 corrupt block producers, and get them to use the sudo command for my benefit, I can wreak total havoc on the chain.
Yeah.
So that's why, well, I think Dan's version 2 constitution is a great conversation piece and will spark some very important conversations we need to have. I think if it's enacted as it's written, it'll lead to the destruction of the chain as we know it, and we'll need to fork.
Tell us how you really feel, Thomas, about this.
Oh, I haven't made up my mind yet.
Okay. I look forward to hearing the community feedback though from.
Oh my gosh, yes, it's going to be great. The second day of the Seoul conference is going to be devoted entirely to governance. We're using an unconference format, totally driven by the attendees. If you've ever been to an unconference before, you know how cool they are. If you haven't, you should look into it because they are amazing.
Okay.
Unconference.
Unconference, yeah. Wow, sounds like a lot of fun. Are you guys doing any streaming or anything by chance?
Part of the challenge of streaming an unconference is there's a lot of breakout sessions, which are hard to stream. But each session ends with one individual presentations from each breakout to the whole group. And those are very streamable because you've got a place to point the camera and there's one speaker. So my suggestion to the organizers was that we stream every hour there's a 15-minute report out, and that those would be very streamable. And I think we're going to be doing simultaneous translations into English, Chinese, and Mandarin, and Korean.
Very cool.
So that might be 3 live streams. Wouldn't that be fun?
That's cool, yeah. And when is the Shanghai meetup? Someone in the chat was asking about that. Shanghai.
So I'm getting into Korea by the 18th, and the Korean one is there's a dinner the 19th, and the 20th and 21st are the 2 main days of the Seoul conference. The 22nd is a Sunday. It's a travel day. I think there's something that evening. And then I believe it's Monday, Tuesday, the 23rd and 24th are the primary days of the Shanghai conference.
Okay. Very nice.
Before you go, Thomas, can you tell us a little bit update on the worker proposal? Where are we in that status?
It is, well, remember the worker proposals has to be behind the referendum work.
Right.
And the referendum work has been doing brilliantly. There's been some wonderfully sharp people working on the referendum code. And worker proposals, I'm going to be in the meeting for that in 2 hours. So if you ask me in 3 hours, I'll have an answer for you. I will say that we've got an incredibly impressive group of volunteers working very, very hard on worker proposals, and a lot of work product has been done, and we're in the process of formalizing it enough to do a public report out and let people see our status. But that's not today.
Okay.
Soon, though.
The referendum code, what's the ETA on that for your best knowledge?
I think it's going to be available for testing here in a couple of days, if I was reading the chat today correctly. Cool. I would ask somebody like is it Daniel Keyes, I believe, and of course Alex Bluejays is in there, Josh Kaufman, 3 or 4 others.
Okay.
Heavy hitters, right? Heavy hitters.
Very nice. Well, thank you as always, Thomas. If we don't see you next week, safe travels, of course.
You'll see me a week from today because it's the day before I leave. But 2 weeks from today is a little up in the air.
Okay.
So I'll do my best to show up because I love coming on. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you to all your viewers and listeners for their support.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas.
Thanks, Thomas. Thanks for coming on.
Good deal. He's a new Thomas when he comes on now. I mean, he has some sterner words these days. Early on when he was talking about that kind of warning, it's like, arbitration, it's still possible, right? Every transaction that's happening right now is still subject to arbitration, subject to that interim constitution. I think he said it well. So EOS Cleaner and others who may be doing bad things. We'll see.
Thomas might be the new EOS Cleaner.
I can't see Thomas copying and pasting from other people's websites. That's
I meant he was cleaning the chain for all.
Oh, he's he's the Punisher. EOS Punisher. That should be Thomas's.
Punisher.
Yeah, it's good having him on. Yeah. Bluejays, you want to finish up with the news? We started earlier. We talked about that Cleaner situation.
Yeah. So we talked about Cleaner and their strange posts on Steemit. We can move on to, we've got a couple news stories here. One was the new GrayMass wallet that was released that has inbuilt RAM buy and sell feature. Well, these guys certainly know how to appeal to the constituents of EOS, right? That's quite a feature. So, what do you think about that, Kevin? Are you trading RAM?
Well, no, I'm not personally. I'm not. I think it certainly seems like there's a lot of bots out there now who are trading RAM. The EOS RAM Telegram channel, I believe it gets 5,000 new messages every day. It's a pretty exciting place to chat and watch the text fly by. So no, not personally. I'm not trying to squat on the RAM or try to figure out which way the price goes. That's the reason why originally I just jumped in to try and do, as Thomas put it, provide value in some way to EOS that I could, right? And that's where EOS Go came from, as you and I just, went ahead and did that route in terms of sitting back and trying to determine which way the price may be going at any given time. It could be up, down, up, down. I don't know. Doesn't matter. So
Yeah.
not doing that personally. Are you, Bluejays?
No, I'm not. We had some plans as a EOS Go, so it's up in the air what we are going to do regarding RAM. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of plans, in terms of providing a strong, neutral source of information for the community. I mean, as of right now, it's all voluntary. So we're going to be scaling back some, guys. I mean, you still see the shows and whatnot, but as you've probably already noticed, we're not quite as busy as we have been in terms of providing all the latest news and stuff like that. So we did a lot of that early on, but we've been scaling that back. So unfortunately, the neutral media source, I mean, it's probably a good niche to be in. The EOS needs that. With elected representatives, you need some place you can go and find news that is not swayed in any way, that is not affected by someone's thoughts or opinions about their own candidacy for block producer. Unfortunately, we just don't have the funds or the manpower to continue this sort of neutral source kind of thing. So just so you guys kind of know where we're coming from, I've seen some questions, people asking, what are you guys up to lately? You'll see us on the weekly radio show. We'll be here chatting about EOS and having a good time. But in terms of whistleblowing and doing all that kind of stuff, we won't be doing that quite as much. Just kind of bringing up issues as they come and maybe helping find some solutions when we can. That's the fun stuff. So what other news do we have there, Bluejays, that you've noticed?
Oh, so there was another thing about Bancor having some ETH stolen. Does not affect the RAM market. So many people thought that this obviously had some play to the RAM market, the Bancor being the algorithm that actively does the price discovery for the RAM. Now, having the RAM market the way it is, having it be an open, free market, you can buy in. Anybody can buy in. So what you're basically doing is and this is the way Dan has explained it, is that you're speculating on the future price. So if you believe the supply is going to go down, or you believe this particular chain is going to use a RAM in a way that there's more supply than demand, or more demand than the supply, that's what you're effectively doing by buying RAM. So you're setting the price. Now Bancor helps you set the price by calculating pretty much the amount of RAM that you have available or in EOS, and then also dividing that by the total amount of free RAM in the system. So there's a calculation for that. Now people thought that the Bancor, because they had something stolen from them, that this was affecting their code, and I don't think it was. It had nothing to do with it. So
no, completely different. It's almost like, I made this analogy in the developer chat, but it's like if you have a Harry Potter book and the website gets hacked, your Harry Potter book is not going to change. Nothing changes. It's already published and out there, so it's just not going to be affected in any way. The actual algorithm that's being used in EOS, not affected by the hack that Bancor faced on their wallet. They lost some funds from their personal wallet, or one of the wallets they were using. I believe here's the tweet that we can link over to you guys. But basically, it's a wallet used to upgrade some smart contracts was compromised, and the wallet was then used to withdraw Ethereum from the Bancor smart contract in the amount of $12.5 million worth. And they also stole $1 million worth of NPXS token and $10 million from the Bancor token as well. So someone just got away with a lot of money from Bancor's wallet. That's all that happened. Nothing to do with the RAM market for EOS, which is the main concern for most of the people who are in EOS. What's going to happen to my RAM?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like you have to be in there to if you were thinking about getting a DAP, you have to be in there. You have to buy some, and because initially that's what happened to when the price starts going up, people immediately go, well, if I'm on the fence about being in RAM, or I'm on the fence of thinking about a DAP in the future, then I need to be in this market. So I think that's what drove the mania, really. It's a scarce resource. So
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I was just reading a new article from Reddit today, the source of all information, right? But it actually was an article that was produced by some cryptobriefing.com. This was an article I had not seen before until I stumbled across it on Reddit. But basically, they're talking about Everpedia. And I actually linked it over to you, Bluejays. I'll put it in the chat as well. But basically, so they're talking about how Everpedia, of course, we've been all wondering where is their airdrop, right? I mean, we've heard they're going to put it out June 15th, and the date keeps pushing back. And they received all that funding from Block One a while ago. Well, it turns out they had bought their RAM to do their airdrop, and then the RAM price went up so high that it was a better idea for them to just sell, right? And then they're sitting back and waiting for the RAM price to go back down before they try to buy back in, right? So they unexpectedly, they didn't think it would go up to 18 times what it originally was. They just happened to get lucky in that way. And now they're waiting before they actually deploy Everpedia token. At least that's what that was quoted in this article. Who knows how true that actually is, but they quoted a guy named Kiar, who we've seen around the chat a few times. He's one of the Everpedia guys. What is his name? I probably can't pronounce his name correctly, but Kedar Iyer, he's the Everpedia's director of software, basically. They bought 500 megabytes of RAM on behalf of Everpedia, he says. And at some point, we made the decision that the RAM market was overpriced and we'd be better off buying back in later. And so we sold, basically. So it kind of gives an idea. So even the companies or the dApps that can afford to actually go ahead and deploy on EOS right now, even it seems they're waiting until this RAM market settles down a little bit or until a solution is found. So,
yeah.
So, Bluejays, anything else you've noticed from this week? I mean, that seems like a lot always happens every week.
Yeah. So people have been saying that the revoting, it's a revoting time. Your vote begins to decay week by week, day by day. So it's a good time with the chain being 4 weeks old that it's a good time to revote and obviously vote for as many people as you can. Which is 30 at this moment. So that's why also proxies have become very popular. So I've noticed that there's proxies out there, people putting their list of 30 out there with their reasonings, with hopes that you would proxy to them. So for that, we say, obviously go with the people that you know and trust, and will not only keep their votes initially done very well researched, but keep on updating it, because this is an active ecosystem and we don't want stagnation in our votes as well too. So
right, yeah, well said. And especially with the possible increase to 50 that you could select at once, proxies will become that much more important, as Thomas said. So you'll be researching your best proxy soon. It'll be a much easier research process than trying to figure out which top 50 block producer candidates may or may not be the best for your chain. So, and also I know this was kind of an offhand comment from Dan. I think he said it in the RAM chat at one point, but he mentioned possibly taking that RAM fee account that has, what is it, 10 million bucks we talked about earlier today, and possibly redistributing it back to staked token holders, people who are voting. This is, of course, just a proposal, just an offhand comment he made, but basically rewarding those people and giving them a little bit of a kickback for what they've done for the ecosystem. Now, I mean, in my mind, that brings up the question of proxies, right? So would the proxies then distribute those possible so-called fees or dividends back to the voters who are helping the proxy get there? Or would that help the proxy fund themselves, right? So the proxy itself could take a small cut from that for their work, for their research they're putting into finding the best block producers, and then kick back maybe 90% to the actual token holders. I don't know how this is all going to work out yet, but it just brings up some more questions in my mind as to a different business model maybe.
Right. Yeah, definitely. There's a business model in in being a proxy as well too. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. Well, Bluejays, anything else we missed here? Let's see.
We don't normally talk about price on this channel, but I thought there was an interesting Reddit article about why EOS at $35 by end of year is still a low prediction. And I found it interesting because one of the comments, the first comments was there, is that price speculation is just baseless. It's until there's a real business adoption for blockchain. I think we really shouldn't care about price. I mean, everybody wants the price to go up, but the adoption of this chain, making it usable by the masses, is what's important here. It's not supposed to be. It's not totally separated from that. And if that real business adoption, that real mainstream adoption is happening, then everyone should be happy.
Yeah, I agree. Recently, if we're going to talk about price a little bit, it just recently tanked quite a bit.
Right.
Not sure why. And people are asking why. Some people like to say as soon as the price makes a big move like this, they go, oh, the whales are suppressing the price so they can buy in big time and that kind of thing. I don't know exactly, right? But some people like to look at this as a positive. Maybe they're just eternal optimists and they're saying, well, they're suppressing the price and then they're going to buy in huge and it'll shoot up. It'll be a big deal. So who knows? That's all speculation. But the price, long term, as Thomas said, we're still in baby form, right? We're still spitting up. We're burping. We're crying a lot. This network is in its infancy right now, only 4 weeks old. So possible another long ways to go before we are able to see any big apps that may be deployed. As soon as this RAM market settles down a little bit, some kind of fix gets implemented or improvement on the current system is implemented, whether it's DANs or it could be the Bancor one that was proposed as well. We'll see. The Bancor one was more of I wouldn't try to describe it. I would say they were trying to there was a proposal to take 11%, I guess, per month from the EOS RAM account. And so therefore, if you are trying to just hoard it and sit on it for no use, you are actually it's devaluing as it goes on. Whereas if you're actually using the RAM, you still own the same amount of RAM, but you're actually using it and you hopefully will not lose too much money on it when you try to sell it back when you do it eventually. But assuming your DApp is successful, you may not sell it back at all for a long time, if ever. So I don't know if that made any sense, Bluejays, but there you go.
Yeah, I mean,
there's two camps now. It kind of reminds me of when the network was launching and we had the two different camps of the block producers who were figuring out the best way to launch the chain in the most secure way possible, right? You had the BIOS boot group, and then you had the Ghostbusters, and then there was this and that going back and forth. Now we have kind of the two proposals for how to fix this RAM model. You have the DAN version and the Bancor version. Each side has their own kind of proponents. Some folks just believe that if you try to increase the RAM, even if you try to do it quickly and you just double the amount of RAM we have, then it would still just fill up quickly. All the speculators may still buy it all up, and we just have the same problem all over again. So there's no real easy fix, basically, long story short. And that's why these two proposals are out there, and that's why everybody's debating it. And in the meantime, the speculators are having a great time, and the RAM channel will continue to be very active, those chatters.
Yeah. Go have some fun. Let's all have some fun. So.
Yeah. Well, Bluejays, any final thoughts for the week?
No, I'm good. Just looking forward to hearing Constitution 3.0 and looking forward to worker proposal system to see what's coming up. So keep us in mind. We'll also have some announcements coming up soon regarding some events coming up in the new year, coming up in the next following months. So keep looking for that from us. I'll post the Telegram room here so you guys know where we hang out.
Yeah, I'm excited for that event in Seoul. I'm hoping there will be some kind of live stream that we can follow along with as best as they can make happen. It'll make me a little nostalgic. I had a great time in May going over there, meeting everybody. Of course, you and I went to San Francisco as well, and met everybody. It seemed like. Yeah. So those kind of gatherings are a lot of fun. They're going to have a lot of block producers go out there, flying out to Seoul, and of course Thomas and maybe even a couple other big names as well. So looks pretty good. I'm hoping that we can watch it on YouTube at least, right? And maybe
and I like that comment that Thomas made. It's like I remember when Node 1 reached out to us, I think somebody, and said, we're organizing this conference, and it was literally 2 weeks ago. It's like, it's hilarious. So
yeah, things happen fast around here in the blockchain world. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, guys, for coming in. And, of course, follow us on the Twitter if you want. Go into the Telegram, and you can chat with us if you'd like. We have the community updates. And the forums are really busy lately. Everybody's we've seen a lot of quality discussion, even about that pseudo contract, which is basically providing the block producers a super user power where they could basically do anything on chain as long as they have 15 of 21 agreeing to it, 15 plus 1 out of 21 agreeing to it. Then they could do pretty much anything. They could reverse transfers. They could do, which would help. They could get rid of people like Cleaner or block producer bad actors or whatever the case is. So they're having a debate about that right now on the forums, among other things. So if you're into that kind of stuff, if you want good quality discussion that you can actually keep up with, Telegram looking at you, then go to the forums and you can do it there. So thanks, guys. As always, go EOS.
Go EOS, guys. Have a great week. Have a good week, Kevin.
Thanks. You too, Bluejays.